On a warm summer evening in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the streets lay under a blanket of stillness, with only the distant hum of crickets breaking the silence. This evening, however, would mark an unanticipated interruption to the peace. Hovering in the night sky, hidden by advanced cloaking technology, was an alien craft belonging to a notorious band of intergalactic bounty hunters known as the Carath Collective. This group had earned its reputation across several galaxies for its ruthless methods and fearsome strength, infamous for capturing beings from various planets for experimentation, information extraction, and lucrative trade. Inside the ship, the Carath crew gathered around the central control deck. The leader, Zorath, a towering alien with scales that shimmered under the ship's artificial light, gazed intently at the holographic map of Earth projected before him. His expression reflected both impatience and arrogance. Beside him stood his crew, a collection of beings from diverse alien species, each known for specific skills in capturing and subduing targets. The Carath Collective was a dangerous force to reckon with, and today they had a new mission capturing Earth's most vulnerable beings, human children. In their cold, calculated view, children were the perfect subjects for their purposes. Young, adaptable, and easy to control, or so they thought. "Initiate the descent," Zorath commanded in a low, guttural voice, glancing at his crewmates with a knowing smirk. The crew nodded, and the ship lowered itself silently toward a small suburban park where children had gathered for an evening of games and exploration, unaware of the lurking threat overhead. As the ship drew closer, an energy field began to emanate from it, casting an invisible net over the area to prevent any noise from escaping and immobilize the unsuspecting children. One by one, the Carath operatives descended from the ship, equipped with devices to paralyze their captives. The children, initially stunned by the bizarre lights appearing in the night sky, barely had time to react as the aliens moved swiftly, encasing each one in a transparent containment pod. The pods were designed to numb the senses and suppress movement, rendering the captives docile. Among the captured was Max, a 12-year-old known for his quick wit and boundless curiosity. While most of his friends were frozen in fear, Max's mind raced with a mixture of adrenaline and determination. Though immobilized within the pod, he strained to observe every detail of his captors, their armor, the strange symbols etched on their devices, and the humming sound that accompanied each movement they made. This wasn't the first time Max had dreamed of encountering extraterrestrial life, he just hadn't imagined it would happen this way. Within moments, the children were all secured in their pods, and the Carath operatives lifted them into the ship's cargo hold. As they laid the children's containment units in organized rows, the Carath crew felt confident in the success of their mission. They couldn't have known that the beings they now held were unlike any captives they'd encountered before. Back on the control deck, Zorath watched the ship's systems flicker to life as they ascended through Earth's atmosphere and into the silence of space. He leaned back in his command chair, folding his arms in satisfaction. His crew busied themselves with routine procedures, checking containment statuses, adjusting the ship's trajectory, and maintaining cloaking to avoid detection by Earth's primitive defense systems. However, what Zorath and his crew failed to notice was that within their seemingly secure containment pods, the children were already adapting to their new environment. The human brain, even that of a child, is a complex and resilient system, particularly in moments of crisis. The Carath containment pods had been designed based on their experiences with other species, but none of those species shared the unique adaptability and ingenuity of Earth's inhabitants. Max, observing the layout of the cargo hold through the translucent wall of his pod, began mentally mapping the room and noting the positioning of each alien. The pods had dulled his ability to move, but he soon discovered he could still wiggle his fingers ever so slightly. It wasn't much, but it was enough for him to try pressing against different points in the containment unit, searching for any weak spots or inconsistencies. Max's determination spread like a ripple among the other children. Though they couldn't communicate verbally, they each began testing the limits of their pods, trying subtle movements to gauge their surroundings. To an outside observer, It might have looked like futile wriggling, but in the minds of these young captives, a shared resolve was taking shape. Several minutes into their ascent, the first anomaly occurred. A faint beeping sounded from one of the control panels, drawing the attention of Lurox, the ship's chief technician. Frowning, he approached the panel and scanned it, muttering in frustration as he tried to identify the source of the problem. The systems reported a minor fluctuation in energy output, which was unusual but not alarming. Zorath, watching from his command chair, raised an eyebrow. "Is there a problem, Lurox?" he asked with a hint of irritation. "Just a small fluctuation, Captain. Likely a system recalibration issue. I'll have it resolved in a moment," Lurox replied confidently. But as the minutes passed, the fluctuation grew more pronounced, and several other control panels began to flash sporadically. Lurox's frown deepened as he navigated the screens, struggling to trace the source. What he didn't realize was that the children's containment pods were now operating in uncharted territory. The mental resilience and latent energy that the children were unknowingly exerting was disrupting the ship's energy grid. In his pod, Max noticed the flickering lights and realized that their subtle efforts were having an effect. He didn't fully understand why, but he sensed that they had a degree of control over the situation. With a determined expression, he concentrated harder, willing his containment pod to give way. His hope grew as he noticed tiny fractures beginning to form near the edges. Meanwhile, Zorath's patience was wearing thin. "Lurox, if you cannot stabilize the system, I'll find someone who can," he barked. "I'm working on it, Captain," Lurox replied, his voice tense with a mixture of fear and frustration. He quickly ran diagnostics, but the results were baffling. The ship's systems were built to withstand intense energy fluctuations, yet they were now acting as if subjected to an external force. In the cargo hold, the children's collective mental focus reached a peak, creating an unintended feedback loop within the containment units. Sparks began to emit from a few pods, and faint cracks appeared in the transparent casings. At first, only Max and a couple of the older children noticed, but soon, all the pods exhibited signs of structural weakness. Realizing they had limited time before the Kargath operatives discovered the breach, Max began tapping the side of his pod in a pattern, hoping to draw the attention of the other kids. Miraculously, his signal was understood. The children each waited for the right moment, and, in a synchronized effort, they pressed against the weak points in their pods, causing several units to short-circuit simultaneously. In the control deck, an alarm blared. Zorath shot up from his chair, his face twisting with anger as he shouted, "What is going on?" "The containment pods. They're destabilizing." Lurox shouted back, disbelief etched across his face. "It's as if the children are somehow interfering with the systems." Zorath's face contorted in fury and disbelief. "Impossible. They are mere children." But as he spoke, one of the containment pods shattered completely, releasing a young girl named Lily, who stumbled forward, dazed but free. Her release triggered a chain reaction as other pods followed suit, cracking open and spilling their captives into the cargo hold. The children, their senses dulled yet resolute, regrouped quickly, their instincts kicking in as they faced their alien captors head-on. The once orderly and controlled cargo hold had descended into chaos. The Kargath operatives scrambled to regain control, but for the first time they faced adversaries they hadn't prepared for: human children whose spirit and resilience had transformed them from passive captives to determined escapees. As the children fought back, their captors realized that capturing these harmless beings from Earth had been a grave miscalculation, and while Zorath bellowed orders, his words fell into a void of chaos, marking the beginning of a battle no one on his crew had anticipated. Chaos reigned in the cargo hold as the young captives, freshly freed from their containment pods, began to act. Their movements were disoriented and sluggish, but their spirits burned with defiance. The alien bounty hunters, however, were far from giving up control. They quickly regrouped, some drawing strange, pulsating weapons, while others prepared devices that emitted fields intended to immobilize their captives once more. Max, still groggy from the effects of the containment pod, observed his surroundings through bleary eyes. His mind raced, remembering the alien tech he had glimpsed during his brief captivity. He was no stranger to high-stakes situations, whether it was facing down school bullies or daring escape challenges with friends. Max thrived on adrenaline. This time, however, the stakes were unlike anything he'd ever faced. Next to him, Lily, a quiet but fiercely smart girl known for her keen observation skills, had already noticed a pattern in the alien's actions. As one of the bounty hunters raised a shimmering weapon toward a group of children, she yanked Max behind a nearby console, whispering in his ear, "Max, they're using that weapon only on groups. If we spread out, they'll have a harder time controlling us." Max nodded, signaling the other children around him to fan out. Despite the alien language barrier, hand signals and urgent gestures were enough to communicate. The children scattered through the cargo hold, hiding behind crates and equipment, turning the once orderly room into a playground of calculated mischief. Lurox, the chief technician, struggled to keep up with the situation. The children's sudden resistance was unprecedented. None of his extensive training had prepared him for the unpredictability of human ingenuity, especially from what he assumed to be Earth's weakest population. Fumbling through his toolkit, he muttered alien curses as he attempted to override the cargo hold's control systems. But to his shock, some of the controls had gone offline. The children's earlier sabotage efforts had damaged far more than he initially realized. Seeing Lurox's frustration, Zorath stormed into the hold, his presence a looming shadow among the chaos. His voice bellowed across the room in a deep, guttural language that sent shivers down the children's spines. "You think you can defy the Carath Collective?" he roared, addressing the children even though they couldn't understand his words. "You are insignificant creatures, and I will personally see to it that you are brought back under control." To punctuate his words, Zorath pressed a control on his wrist device. The cargo hold's walls suddenly pulsed with a low hum, and a fine mist began to seep from vents above, spreading across the room. A few of the children gagged as the thick air burned in their lungs. The mist was meant to sedate, to lull the captives back into compliance. It had worked countless times before on alien species deemed much tougher than humans. But the children had other plans. They'd already learned that grouping together made them an easy target, so they began to move independently, dodging between crates and consoles. Max noticed the mist thickening and had an idea. He motioned for Lily and a few others to follow him as he ducked under a metal panel and tapped on his inhaler, a gadget he had on him for his asthma. Though it was meant for emergencies, the inhaler helped him breathe better, and he shared it with others, passing it around to minimize their exposure to the sedative. Meanwhile, Zorath ordered his crew to herd the children back toward the center of the room. Lurox and the others formed a line, blocking exits and pressing closer, trying to corner their young captives. But the children, emboldened by their small victories, had grown craftier. Lily found a loose control panel on the side of a console, and with Max's help, she yanked it open, revealing a tangle of wires. "Maybe if we mess with these wires, we can shut down something important," she whispered, glancing back at Max. Max grinned. "Or blow something up," he said with a wink. With no time to debate, the two began fiddling with the wires, their fingers working rapidly. The other children watched in awe as Lily's hands deftly twisted and connected wires, while Max scanned for anything that looked like a power source. After a few minutes of focused work, the console suddenly emitted a loud pop, and the lights in the cargo hold flickered off, leaving them in near darkness. Panic surged through the Carath crew. Their night vision systems had malfunctioned due to the sudden power surge, leaving them effectively blind. The children, who had adjusted better to the dark, took advantage of the disorientation. As their eyes adapted, they saw an opportunity to escape from the room and explore further into the ship, hoping to find a way to disable the entire system, or at the very least, get a message out to Earth. While most of the children dashed toward the far end of the cargo hold, where they'd seen a door panel, Max and Lily stayed behind, hiding in the shadows to monitor the aliens. Lily's quick thinking had given them an edge, but she knew it was only temporary. The Carath Collective was ruthless and would soon adapt to their tactics. They had to keep moving. As the crew stumbled and shouted in confusion, Zor-Ath's rage only grew. His voice boomed through the dark, barking orders to his crew. "Restore power, now. I won't be outsmarted by mere children." Lurox, desperately trying to restore control, stumbled toward a nearby control console, flicking switches and pressing buttons. He managed to partially restore the lighting, casting the room in a dim, eerie red glow. But by the time the lights returned, half of the children had already escaped through the open door, sprinting into the maze like corridors of the ship. Max and Lily followed close behind, guiding their group through the narrow, metallic hallways. The ship was a labyrinth, with corridors that twisted and branched in confusing ways. The children moved in silence, their adrenaline pumping as they listened for the sound of pursuing footsteps. Behind them, Zor-Ath and his crew frantically tried to restore full control of the ship, but each attempt was hampered by the chaos the children had already created. As they turned a corner, the children stumbled upon a room filled with holographic screens displaying various systems across the ship. Max immediately recognized it as the ship's command center. Inside, a lone Carath technician sat at a console, engrossed in a repair protocol and unaware of the group approaching. Max signaled the group to stay back, then crept closer to the technician. With a quick motion, he grabbed a loose tool from the floor, a metal rod with a sharp edge, and approached the technician quietly. Just as the alien turned, Max swung the rod, striking the console and creating a loud clang that echoed through the command center. Startled, the technician turned to face Max, but before he could react, Lily pressed a button on the console, and the doors to the command center sealed shut. The other children quickly followed suit, finding various objects around the room to barricade the doors and make sure they wouldn't be interrupted. With the technician immobilized, Max and Lily studied the console. Neither was fluent in alien technology, but they recognized the universal layout of command controls. As Lily sifted through options on the screen, she stumbled upon a communication interface. "We can send a message," she whispered excitedly to Max. Max's heart raced as he thought of Earth. If they could get a signal out, someone would know they were up here, adrift in an alien ship. He watched Lily type furiously, piecing together symbols and finding a way to activate a signal. But just as they established a connection, a loud alarm blared through the command center. The Carath Collective had realized the children were tampering with critical systems and were closing in on them. "Hurry, Lily," Max urged, glancing anxiously at the door, where shadows moved ominously behind the barricade. Finally, the communication line connected. A holographic map of Earth flickered on the screen. Lily input the final coordinates, sending an emergency distress signal that would alert the nearest Earth-based monitoring station. At that moment, the doors to the command center burst open, and Zor-Ath stormed in, his face twisted with fury. He aimed his weapon at the group of children, preparing to end their rebellion once and for all. But before he could fire, Max grabbed a nearby control lever and pulled it with all his strength. A powerful shockwave surged through the room, knocking Zor-Ath back and disorienting the other aliens. Taking advantage of the chaos, the children scattered, fleeing through different exits. The signal had been sent. All they could do now was hope that help would arrive. As the group darted through the ship's twisting hallways, they knew the battle was far from over. But with Earth aware of their predicament, hope flickered in their hearts. Together they would continue to outsmart their captors, one step closer to freedom with each twist and turn. The alien ship rumbled with a low hum as the distress signal from the command center echoed through its systems. Somewhere deep within, warning alarms continued to blare, a steady reminder of the chaotic situation that had erupted. Zor Eighth, leader of the Carath collective, staggered to his feet, his face twisted with anger and frustration. His once tightly controlled operation had devolved into absolute chaos, and he now faced a reality he had never anticipated: being outsmarted by a group of human children. As Zor Eighth collected himself, he barked orders at his remaining crew members, demanding they regain control of the ship. Despite his fury, he knew they couldn't risk injuring the captives too severely. These children were valuable, rare specimens for intergalactic buyers who wanted to study human physiology. But now, this cargo had become the ship's greatest threat. Meanwhile, in a hidden corner of the ship, Max, Lily, and the rest of the children regrouped. They were exhausted, their faces pale with fear, but there was a gleam of determination in their eyes. Max took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts as he tried to formulate a plan. They had sent a distress signal to Earth, but they knew it might take hours, or even days, for help to arrive. They couldn't rely on a rescue alone. They had to find a way to survive until then, and perhaps even seize control of the ship themselves. Lily, always observant, noticed a schematic displayed on a nearby console. She pointed it out to Max, explaining that it appeared to be a map of the ship. Together, they studied it, tracing potential routes to critical systems that could further disrupt the Carath collective's control. "Look," Lily whispered, pointing to a labeled section near the core of the ship. "This is the power generator. If we can reach it, we might be able to shut down the entire system." Max's eyes widened. "You're right. If we take out the generator, they'll have no choice but to abandon the ship. It might be our only chance." The children huddled closer, each feeling the weight of the plan they were about to undertake. They knew the risks, but none of them hesitated. Their fear had transformed into something stronger: a shared sense of purpose, a fierce resolve to escape from their captors and return home. Moving quietly, the group made their way through the narrow, winding corridors of the alien ship. Their small size allowed them to slip undetected through ventilation shafts and hidden pathways that the aliens seldom used. Along the way, they encountered occasional members of the crew, but with quick thinking and a few improvised distractions, they managed to avoid capture. Max felt his pulse quicken each time they turned a corner, but the adrenaline kept him focused. As they approached the generator room, a faint hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls. The room was heavily guarded by two towering Carath soldiers, both equipped with weapons designed to immobilize intruders. The children crouched behind a crate, observing the guards as they discussed their options. "Maybe we can create a diversion," whispered Lily, eyeing a small device clipped to her belt. It was a sound grenade she had picked up from one of the storage rooms, capable of emitting a high-pitched noise that would disorient anyone within a certain radius. Max nodded, signaling for the group to be ready. With a quick motion, Lily activated the grenade and tossed it down the corridor. Within seconds, a piercing sound filled the air, causing the guards to clutch their heads in agony. As they stumbled away from their posts, disoriented and vulnerable, the children seized the opportunity to slip inside the generator room. Inside, the room was dimly lit, with consoles and control panels lining the walls. In the center stood the main generator, a massive machine pulsating with energy. Its core emitted a faint blue glow, casting eerie shadows across the room. Max and Lily approached the generator cautiously, inspecting it from all angles. Though they had no formal knowledge of alien technology, they understood enough to identify key control mechanisms. Max reached out, carefully examining a series of wires and levers. He remembered a science project he had done back on Earth, where he had studied electrical circuits. Though this alien machine was far more advanced, the basic principles seemed similar enough for him to make an educated guess. "We'll have to be quick," he said, glancing over his shoulder to ensure they were still alone. "If we cut the power, it might only last a few minutes before they can reset it. We need to disable it completely." With a nod, Lily helped Max locate the primary power source. The two of them worked together, disconnecting wires and adjusting controls with growing confidence. The generator's hum began to waver, its lights flickering as the energy levels dropped. The rest of the children watched anxiously, their expressions a mix of hope and fear. But just as Max was about to pull the final lever, the door to the generator room burst open. Zorath and a group of Kargath soldiers stormed in, their faces filled with fury and determination. The children froze, their hearts pounding as they realized they had been discovered. Zorath sneered, stepping forward with a menacing glare. "You've caused enough trouble," he growled, his voice dripping with contempt. "Did you really think you could escape?" Max clenched his fists, refusing to back down. His mind raced, searching for a way to turn the situation to their advantage. The generator was almost disabled, but he needed a few more seconds to complete the process. Summoning his courage, he stepped forward, placing himself between Zorath and the rest of the group. "We're not afraid of you," Max said defiantly, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. Zorath laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "You're just children. You don't stand a chance against the Kargath collective." But before Zorath could react, Lily took advantage of the momentary distraction. With a quick motion, she pulled the final lever, severing the power connection completely. The generator sputtered, its lights flickering one last time before plunging the room into darkness. The entire ship shuddered as the power drained away, its systems grinding to a halt. Zorath roared in fury, but in the darkness, the children moved swiftly, using their familiarity with the generator room's layout to navigate toward an emergency exit. They squeezed through a narrow hatch, slipping away, just as the Kargath soldiers scrambled to restore power. In the dim corridors outside, Max led the group through the maze of hallways, heading toward the ship's escape pods. The children moved in silence, their hearts pounding with a mixture of excitement and terror. They could hear the shouts of the Kargath crew echoing through the halls, but the lack of power had crippled the ship's surveillance and tracking systems, giving the children a crucial advantage. As they neared the escape pods, Max felt a surge of relief. They had made it this far, and freedom was within their grasp. But as they approached the docking bay, they encountered one final obstacle: Zorath himself, blocking the entrance with a weapon drawn, his face twisted in rage. "You think you can just walk away?" he snarled, leveling his weapon at the children. "I am Zorath, leader of the Kargath collective. No one defies me." Max took a deep breath, stepping forward to face Zorath. His friends stood behind him, their faces a mix of fear and determination. They had come too far to give up now. Gathering his courage, Max spoke, his voice steady and unwavering. "You may be powerful, but you'll never be able to control us," he said. "Humans don't give up, not even kids." For a moment, Zorath hesitated, thrown off by Max's defiance. Seizing the opportunity, Lily reached for a small control panel on the wall and activated the docking bay's release mechanism. The escape pods unlocked, their hatches swinging open with a soft hiss. The children scrambled toward the pods, slipping inside just as Zorath lunged forward in a final, desperate attempt to stop them. With a last burst of strength, Max slammed the hatch shut, sealing Zorath outside. As the escape pod's engines roared to life, the children braced themselves, feeling the pod detach from the ship and launch into the void of space. Through the small window, Max saw Zorath's enraged face fade into the distance, his figure shrinking as they hurtled away from the Kargath ship. The escape pod's automated system guided them back toward Earth, and for the first time since their capture, the children allowed themselves to relax. They were safe. The stars whizzed past, and Max felt a sense of awe as he watched the familiar shape of Earth grow larger in the viewport. As they descended through the atmosphere, relief washed over them, mingling with a sense of triumph. They had faced unimaginable odds, outwitted a ruthless alien crew, and survived. The pod touched down gently in a field near their hometown, and as the hatch opened, the children stepped out, breathing in the fresh, cool air of Earth. Back on their home planet, They would return to their ordinary lives, but none of them would ever forget the harrowing journey they had endured together. They had proven that courage, resourcefulness, and friendship could overcome even the most daunting challenges. And though they were just children, they had become heroes in their own right. The alien ship, now crippled and adrift in space, served as a lasting reminder to the Carath collective and to the galaxy at large that humans, no matter their age, should never be underestimated.